Good afternoon to you all. It is 2 p.m. now, I believe. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you for joining the TSI online public lecture series. To those of us who joined us from the beginning of the year, thank you for your continuous support. This month's series is on Islamic banking and finance in Ghana. And we have our able speakers who are going to do this with us for the next 45 minutes. I don't know if you can all hear me. Emmanuel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So today's lecture, as I mentioned earlier, is on Islamic banking and finance in Ghana. We have our main speaker and our respondent. Our main speaker is going to have 30 minutes to give us his lecture, followed by the response from our respondent, which is going to take 15 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for questions if you have any. And please, while we listen to the lecture, if you have any comments or questions, you can put them in the chat box and we'll read them after the presentations. Our first speaker is Mr. Emmanuel Kwame Tete. He's a research associate of the Sane Institute, a research fellow at the Akofi Christaller Institute of Theology, Mission and Culture, and a minister of the Presbyterian Church of Ghana. He's currently a PhD candidate at the University of Edinburgh, working on Islamic law and Christian ethics of financial intermediation. Mr. Emmanuel brings to this discussion knowledge from his previous studies in economics, management, Christian theology, and Islamic studies from various institutions. His research interest is in religion and society. I'll just go ahead and introduce our second speaker so that when Emmanuel is done, he can continue with the discussion. Our second speaker, who's the respondent, is Dr. Ali. Dr. Ali, Dr. Shaibu Ali is a finance expert and development practitioner with experience in Islamic finance, corporate governance, and sustainable development. He holds a PhD in management science and engineering, finance and economics from Jiangsu University, pardon me if I amended that, an MBA in business administration from the University of Education, Winneba, and a BA in business administration from the Islamic University College. Dr. Ali is currently pursuing a PhD in Islamic finance in Malaysia with several certifications in Islamic banking and finance from reputable institutions worldwide. He's currently the Director General of the Islamic Finance Research Institute, Ghana. So thank you, Emmanuel, and thank you, Dr. Ali, for joining us this afternoon. Emmanuel, I think I'll just go straight to you. You can start. You have 30 minutes. Please pardon me, but I'm going to try and stick to our timing so that we can have an easy flow of discussion. So Emmanuel, you have now till 2:30. Hopefully, if you extend to 2:35, we should be done with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Abirat, and to TSI also for the opportunity to make this presentation. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, we can, Emmanuel.
Yeah, we can.
Good. So basically, I will be trying to give a general thing about Islamic finance, and I will narrow it down to the Ghanaian context, highlighting what I consider but also what the advocates for Islamic finance consider to be the strength of it, what it promises for the Ghanaian society and economy. Then I would also highlight some of the challenges that need to be overcome if it is to work. So basically, the Islamic finance, it's people usually tend to conflict it, Islamic finance and Islamic banking, but Islamic finance is the broader concept, and Islamic banking is just a subset of it. There are three basic distinct features of Islamic finance. The main one is the fact that it must be interest-free. Any credit transaction where funds move or resources move from one party to the other, there must not be a pre-arranged interest on whatever has to be paid. So that's the major distinct feature of Islamic finance, in the sense that unlike conventional banking and finance, where almost everything is reliant on interest, with Islamic finance, credit transactions have to be interest-free. Then Islamic finance also tries to limit excessive risk. Risk is where people involved in finance, they engage in transactions where the probability of realizing good can be low, it can be high, but there are instances where the risk is just too high. But some would rather look at what is the potential gain is, and sometimes ignore the risk involved. But Islamic finance is developed in such a way that it limits or minimizes or even avoids excessive risk taking. And then the other unique feature is that instead of interest, charging people interest upfront, it rather practices what we call profit and loss sharing, so that in every credit transaction, the parties involved rather share whatever gain come from the transaction, rather than charging one party interest ahead of time. And then the other unique feature of Islamic finance is that funds must not be used to finance anything that is forbidden by the Sharia, by Islamic law. For example, alcohol transactions, gambling, and anything that Islam forbids to be ethically wrong. Islamic finance would not permit funds within Islamic finance scheme to be used for such transactions. So these are the general unique features of Islamic finance, but in practice, they may mean different. Sometimes the details come in context when they are being practiced. And this is based on Quranic text and also Hadith. This is just one of the Quranic texts, but all the others are quite related. But basically, they all call for, in the Quran, the Arabic word would be riba, but the English translation would use the term usury. Some would also say that, well, it's interest. But the Quranic text, like what I've put there, Surah 3130, says, "So ye who believe, devour not usury doubled and multiplied, but fear God that you may really prosper." And there are even other Quranic passages that warn believers that those who engage in usury, riba, or interest, that there is strict punishment for them. So the practice of Islamic finance is based on Quranic teachings, but also on Hadith. For those of us who may not be familiar with Islamic sources, the Hadith is a compilation of the sayings and doings or deeds of the Prophet Muhammad. So there were instances where either he himself or someone else was engaged in credit transactions, and he had to respond to questions in relation to that. And one of those was when he said, gold is to be paid for by gold, silver for silver, wheat by wheat, barley by barley, dates by dates, and salt by salt, like for like and equal for equal. Payment made hand to hand. He who makes an addition to it or asks for an addition deals in riba. The receiver and the giver are equally guilty. So that in any exchange, both in commodity and money transactions, what you give out to the person, you should receive equal amounts of that. Of course, there are a lot of debates as to how this would translate into the ban on charging of interest. But some would say that, has it got to do with just commodities? Because in the hadith, for instance, he mentions specifically commodities, and he mentions some specific commodities. How can we translate that into transaction that involves fiat money? Because some jurists would argue that he mentions gold, silver, which were means of exchange at the time. But others would also say that, well, these were commodity monies, but these days we don't use commodity money for transactions, we use fiat money. But these are all debates that we cannot engage on now. But just to mention that the idea of Islamic finance that forbids the charging of interest, it is grounded in Quranic and Hadith teachings. I mentioned earlier that Islamic finance is the broader thing. There are various components of it. We have the Islamic microfinance, we have Islamic insurance, then we have Islamic banking and Islamic bond. A lot of the time people talk about Islamic banking because that is one financial transaction that is most popular. People patronize it most. So that's why you would hear a lot of that. But these basic principles that I mentioned earlier, you would see all of them play out in these different types of financial transactions. So instead of charging interest when it comes to Islamic banking, let me focus now on Islamic banking because that's the popular one and that's what many of us may have to encounter. In Islamic banking, instead of charging people interest, traditional banks, they rely on interest income. They get money from depositors or from investors or from their capital. Then they also give their money to others on credit in terms of loan. Or even buy treasury bills, other instruments. And then whatever interest they get from it, they keep part for their own operations, and then they give part to those who bring their money for savings. So traditional banks, they live on interest. By Islamic bank, instead of charging interest, they have various schemes by which they are able to facilitate exchange and movement of funds. One is Murabaha, and it's just like hire purchase, where you, instead of the bank giving you money to go and maybe buy a house, they would rather use the money to pay for the house and give the house to you. And then whilst you use the house, you pay them back for the usage of the house. So that in the end, it's more or less, there is a movement of funding, but it is in real assets, not just money. Then there is also Mudaraba, which is like equity financing, where instead of the bank giving you money and telling you that at the end of this period, you bring me this amount of interest, they give you the money to go and do whatever business you want to do. And the profit that comes from it, the bank has a share. Sometimes the percentage is agreed upfront. The bank takes a share and you also maintain the other share. And this kind of arrangement is to ensure that there is risk sharing and also profit sharing, so that if I don't make money from whatever I go and use the money for, if I don't make profit from it, I'm not the only one bearing the risk of it. The bank also shares some risk of it as well. And then there is the partnership one, where they come together. Whatever the bank gives to the person, they used to operate something that is like a partnership, so that the bank becomes the traditional, they'll call it the inactive partner, And then the one who is working with the money is like the active partner. And then there is also Ijara, which is equivalent to mortgage and leasehold financing. And then there is Salam forward sales, where even before something is produced, you can start paying for it. Then when it is done, then it is given to you. So all these schemes are done in such a way that you avoid having to pay interest on the money. Now let's come to Ghana and see how the progress of Islamic finance in Ghana. Advocacy for Islamic finance has started very long ago, and as far back as the early 2004, there were a number of NGOs which were advocating for the implementation of Islamic finance, somehow as a kind of social financing. Then there were some few experimentations. In 2010, I think there was the first Islamic microfinance company that operated somewhere deep in Accra, but that too could not work. When I was doing my field work, I spoke with the leader of it, and he was blunt and said, "My brother, it couldn't work." So we had to stop it. But that was not the end. The conversation still continued. And somewhere along 2015, the Bank of Ghana even issued a provisional license to some organizations, foreign organizations, to try it. But later they had to withdraw the license because they couldn't move on. No, that was not to do with the central bank. It had to do with the partners involved in those organizations, how they handled. But you would understand that it could also not have worked because at the time there were no regulations from the central bank in place. So that was already going to be a challenge. But around that same time, some commercial banks were trying what they call Islamic finance window, where they were not operating strict Islamic finance, but at least 3 banks now, which I don't have to mention their names, some of the big banks in Ghana, they were operating what we call halal accounts, which to them, they try to model it on Islamic finance, but they also had their own challenges that they could not sustain it. Along the line, there were several other different organizations that tried it. One that really did it closely to what Islamic finance would dictate was in Kumasi. But of course, they also had their own challenges along the line. But between 2014 and 2016, advocacy for it heightened, and it even got to the point of cabinet of the government of Ghana. They discussed it. And eventually that led to the Bank of Ghana amending the Special Deposit Banking and Special Deposit Taking Institutions Act at 930 in 2016. And if you go to that act, you see that it was then introduced that banks, financial institutions could practice non-interest banking. So that was the first introduction, a major legislative introduction or opening for the operation of Islamic finance. But then, yes, just having it in the act that banks could operate interest-free transactions, that was not all, because there was a need for a regulatory framework. That could not have been done. So still, it could not be operationalized. In 2024, getting to the election, the Muslim community presented what they called Muslim manifesto of the kind of things that are of interest to them. And one of them was Islamic banking, which the request was that the necessary regulatory framework should be put in place to have those who are interested in Islamic banking to be able to do it. And this, I think this was taken on board. So last year, the central bank introduced the regulatory framework to make room for the implementation of Islamic finance. So now let's look at the promises or some of the good things that Islamic finance promises. One, and this point is mainly from the advocates of Islamic finance, of the fact that they take the case that there are some Muslims who, because of their strong commitment to the dictates of their faith, that it is wrong to charge interest on any transaction, they are unable to participate fully in the financial market, because when they do, they will be hurting their conscience. And in my work, I interviewed at least 2 people who shared the same concern, that they felt some kind of guilt whenever they have to give or take interest. So the point is that it is somehow violating the religious rights of these people when there is no opportunity for them to participate in an interest banking. But then when it is done, when provision is made for them, then it also ensures financial inclusion for those who could not be involved in the financial market because of the religious sense of guilt somehow that they feel. Then the third advantage or promise is access to interest-free credits, which I believe is something that every Ghanaian would be happy about, because people complain a lot about interest rates on loans. Banks complain. Until recently, some loans were as high as interest rates were as high as 35% and 25%. So that's something that everybody would be worried about. So the fact that you have access to credit without interest is something that it offers some advantage and positive that people, both individuals and organizations, would be happy with. The other advantage is that it provides room for additional option for public finance. We have heard our politicians complain a lot about the fact that one of the reasons why Ghana, we went into that kind of economic difficulty was debt. Our Euro bonds, we borrow a lot of money and all that. There are, apart from IMF, the Euro bond, the World Bank, there is also other financing international organization like the Islamic Development Bank, who would also offer funding to the government, but that would not be on interest basis. It will use one of the schemes that we discussed earlier. So the argument is that if we make room for the operation of Islamic finance, then even the government can have access to those markets. And then there is also an Islamic version of what we call the bond market. And we know one of the things that raised Ghana's debt high was bond, the Euro bond. But there is the Sukuk, which I mentioned earlier, the Islamic finance version of bonds, where individuals give money to government on credit, not charging interest, but it is tied to some economic activities, and then the gains that come from it, the people also make sure of it. So the argument is that if Islamic finance is put in place, then the government also has that kind of opportunity. But so these are what I would call the promises of Islamic finance. But then there are aspects that also come as a challenge. So let's look at them. And one of them is what I'll call the political and religious sensitivity challenge. The Islamic Finance Research Institute, IFRIC, which Dr. Ali, thanks to be part of this, who will be speaking now, is the head of. They usually hold an annual Islamic finance conference. And a few years ago, I think it was 2023 or 2024, one of the speakers there was the former information minister, Dr. Abdul Hamid, who He's himself an Islamic scholar. He teaches Islam, so not just a politician, but also an Islamic scholar. And he was one of the speakers. He was one of the speakers at this conference, and he made a profound statement, which I think it captures what I consider to be the political and the religious challenge for Islamic finance. It says, we live in what is called a liberal society. One, we live in what is called a secular society, that we operate a secular constitution. We operate a secular constitution in the country in which we are the minority, and we here is referring to Muslims. In a country in which 70% and more are non-Muslim, suggesting the formation of anything that is called Sharia will backfire. And that was the caution he raised, that already people have negative, sometimes you would say prejudiced impression of anything called Sharia or Islamic law or Islamic. Unfortunately so. And so the point is making that if now you are introducing something, you give it a label of Islamic finance, then people would begin to raise the religious question that, well, is it not a way of imposing religious ideas? Is it not a channel or a means of imposing Islamic law, the Sharia? And so people would begin to raise all those questions. And indeed, when the central bank introduced the regulation last year, you heard a lot of people in the media raise that concern that this is some kind of religious imposition or something of that sort. So that kind of sensitivity, it's one thing that needs to be dealt with regarding Islamic finance, so that how can everyone else, regardless of their religion, embrace it? And how is it done in such a way that it is not seen to be some kind of position of Sharia, for instance, as it is the foundations and the teachings of it, the principles of it are also grounded in a religious law. And in our society where we are not irreligious, but we are constitutionally secular, how do we explain application of such a religiously informed policy or program? So I think that's the political challenge. And Dr. Mustafa made a point, some of them which I could not put on the quotes here, that they politicians are mindful of all this. And that's why it's been difficult for them even to give room for it, meaning they've been sensitive of the kind of reaction that would come from those who do not belong to the Muslim community. So that's one of the political and religious sensitivity questions. But then operationally, inbuilt in the operation of Islamic finance is also structures that raise not only religious and political, but also legal questions. In pristine Islamic finance practice, there should be what we call the Sharia board that kind of police whatever policies or programs or services that will be put in place to ensure that they comply with the Sharia or Islamic law on finance. And so the question is, we already have established structures, governance structures for financial institutions in Ghana. Where do we fit them? Would they serve just like the board or outside the board? And if they are outside the board, would whatever input they make be mandatory or advisory? If it is mandatory, if it is advisory, then how can it be ensured that the financial institutions comply with it? And if it is mandatory, what informs the advice of the Sharia board? Their work, they are to ensure that the program complies with Islamic law. And here is the case where our legal system, at least apart from marital laws, our legal system does not seem to have been for religious law, specifically Islamic law. So if the Sharia board is to operate based on the dictates of Islamic law, and they are to guide the programs and the policies, when there is an issue, how would it be adjudicated in the courts? Because we do not have Islamic law as part of our legal system. And this would also cause others to raise the question that, is this not also a window for introduction of Islamic law? So not only in Ghana, in many places that Islamic finance was introduced, these were some of the questions and the challenges that raised opposition to it. But the Bank of Ghana intervention, the guideline and the regulations that they introduced, they try to resolve some of these political, legal, and religious sensitivity questions that I have raised. One of them is the fact that you realize the name that they use for the regulation. They didn't say Islamic finance, they said non-interest banking. And this then takes away the religious label, which sometimes arouse some sensitivity. And to be fair, the Banking Act does not make provision for Islamic law. It makes provision for non-interest banking. And this regulation is only to provide a framework for how it will be implemented. So they would be in the right, they are on the right path for not labeling it as Islamic finance, but saying non-interest banking. So the label, they try to use the label to avoid that. Then you see also what would have been called the Sharia board, they rather give it a different name, which is called an interest banking advisory committee, which then takes away again the Sharia label. So in this way, the Bank of Ghana has been careful to somehow minimize, if not completely remove, what would cause that kind of religious tension. And in other countries, they've tried to do that. In Nigeria, for instance, when there were attempts to introduce it and the debate and the religious questions came up. So eventually the central bank, the laws they put in place, they said, okay, you can practice non-interest banking, but it should not come with any religious label. Not even the institution should come with a religious label. So the central bank appears to have done the same thing, but it doesn't look like that religious label thing has gone away, because in the regulations, you have where they have provision for the legal institutional framework for which the regulation has been provided. Then at the bottom of it, it is Islamic Financial Services Board, and then Accounting and Auditing Organization of Islamic Financial Institutions. So even though they try to deal with the label aspects, you still see in it the religious influence. Then all the terms that they use in it, they are purely Islamic finance terms. The prohibited elements are the very things I spoke of earlier. The permitted ones are the very ones I spoke of earlier. So the language itself does not make it possible for people to not see it as Islamic finance, and rather see it as a general non-interest banking. So even though the central bank tried to deal with the labeling thing, but in essence, it is still in practice the Islamic, pure Islamic finance, except for those few things. So that makes the religious and legal thing to remain for people to look at. I'll be wrapping up shortly, Abirat. But to be fair, the question is this the first time or the only religious intervention or participation in finance in Ghana? Is it only about Islamic teachings or Quranic teachings? We would realize that the whole idea of non-interest banking or not taking interest is not unique to the Quran. We also have teachings in the Bible that speaks about these things, especially in the Torah, the books of Moses. You have in Leviticus, you have in Deuteronomy, you have also in Exodus. I could not list all of them, where God asked the Israelites not to charge interest when they offer credits to some of their labors. But what is of interest here is that you realize that in this text, there were some kind of qualification that not giving credit loan in general, but in the Deuteronomy, for instance, it talks of another Israelites. And then in Leviticus, it talks of the poor amongst you. In Exodus, it gives a similar qualification. So yes, it is not only Muslims who or the Quran that has provisions for non-interest, the forbidding charging of interest on loans. The Christians also have the same thing in our Bible. The difference is how we interpret these things, and we interpret them differently, so that Christians have this in their Bible, but we don't interpret it in the literal form. And I spent a whole chapter discussing this, the kind of debates around it that made Christians to move away from the thinking that this kind of passages forbid any Christian from charging interest on loan. So the kind of religious teaching that undergird Islamic finance, you also find those kind of revelatory texts also in Christianity. The only difference has been the interpretation. And of course, it is not only Christians, even in Islam, there are a lot of debates about the jurisprudence of how Islamic law that says no charging of interest was carved out of those Quranic passages, which of course I have a whole chapter on that, but time would not permit us to discuss that. So apart from that, apart from the biblical provision of non-interest on loans, over the years, Christians have also gone through the same stage that Islam and Islamic finance is now, where there were a lot of arguments, and there were times in the life of the church, that it was illegal for anyone to charge interest on loan. People were in prison. People had to suffer some sentences, very severe sentences, for charging interest on loans. But over the centuries, right through the 12th centuries, the 10th, 11th, 12th centuries, the church moved on and come to have a different perspective of things. So if we see non-interest banking only in terms of Islamic teachings, then there is a sense in which Islamic law in this regard seems to also be following a pattern that Christian ethics has also followed over the years, where there was a time where there was a strict adherence to the literal meaning of these biblical passages, and then gradually other thoughts came in, and there were shifts in positions. And then even in Ghana here, I'm getting to the end now, the church has also been very much involved in financial services. What we know today to be the credit union, the whole of West Africa, was first introduced by a Catholic priest who was serving in Jirapa in the Upper West region. As part of his ways of helping to address poverty among his congregants, he introduced credit union. And that is what has developed to become what we know now as credit union. And of the credit unions that we have in Ghana now, they have two categories, the parish and the non-parish credit unions. The parish credit unions
are... Sorry to cut you, but we ran out of time. So if you could
just 5 minutes to wrap up, please.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Those we call parish credit unions are either started by churches or people who belong to a particular church. So the Christian participation in financial services is also very deep in Ghana. And even with what we call microfinance now, before it became regulated, it was first started, or the Christian Council of Ghana played a lead role in starting what we now know as microfinance. So the church has also been involved in financial service. The only difference, or maybe the main difference, is that when the church is involved in these financial services, they do not ask for any unique laws or regulations to guide theirs. They also do not ask that it should be done. Even when they want to do it based on the teachings of the Bible, they do it voluntarily. They do not do it through a law. And that has been the only difference. And there are many financial institutions in Ghana now that are owned by churches. So apart from these problems, there is also the economic question, because for people who are not religiously committed, it comes to the question of whether economically Islamic finance instruments make economic sense to them. And an example of all the schemes that I've mentioned, you see that we have equivalence, hire purchase, equity financing, partnership, leasehold, forward sales. We already have all this in conventional banking. So maybe a question that Islamic finance implementation and implementers would have to ask is, why are people not patronizing this already? And how differently would it be for Islamic finance? We have some of our market women do high purchase, for instance, but you don't see it at a high business level. So the question is, why, how would people be able to embrace these ones when we already have similar schemes in conventional finance? Then the last question, economic question to ask is, the issue of no interest in Islamic finance schemes, is it real or it's nominal? Because even though you don't charge interest, but what you have to pay back, a certain markup is built in. And so people would ask that, well, is it not the case that you are not charging interest in name, but in reality, I am paying more than I receive? And last time I made a presentation on this in Oxford, there were some people from majority Muslim world. One lady after the program came to me and said, yes, from Egypt. She said, yes, Emmanuel, you are right. In Egypt, they tell us that we are getting loans, no interest. But at the end of the day, we pay more on it than we would have actually paid for interest. So how do we address that kind of problem? Is interest only about what people pay upfront, or in reality, when people pay more than they receive? What shall we say? I believe that both Quranic and biblical passages on charging of interest have deeper values behind them than just the binary question of whether to charge interest or not. And so moving on, I would think that if the religious faiths that have some of these teachings in their scriptures will look at the deeper values behind them and then work with it, we would have a better financial services for the people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for that insightful presentation. Dr. Ali, I think we've already run out of time, so I'll just move straight to you to take over. You have 15 minutes, please, after which we'll take some questions or comments from our audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon to our cherished listeners. I want to believe you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
We can.
Okay. It's unfortunate. I have only 15 minutes. And to address most of the issue Emmanuel has raised, practically it's not possible. Or maybe I will suggest to him, maybe in the future, we can have enough time to handle some of the issues that he has raised. Of course, there are solutions to all what he has raised in his presentation. But because of time, like the way I mentioned, I cannot go deep, with my explanation. Otherwise, I'll get nowhere. The concerns that he has raised are, concerns that people have been raising over a period, and I think Currently, as we are speaking, those who have patronized the system are beginning to see the difference between the conventional system and the non-interest financial system. So I want to just start by, explaining something to Mr. Emmanuel or maybe to our church listeners on the issue of fund, what we call ethical fund. Ethical fund, as we see, are used for things that are ethical, that are being supported or backed by both the religious books. Of course, I think Mr. Emmanuel has shared some verses with us. He started by raising some of the Quranic verses that speak against interest, and as well share some Bible verses. Of course, we have both, not only in the Bible, we have even in the Torah, and as well as in the Islamic books, that is the Quran. You go to Quran chapter 2, verse 278, 279 is against interest. You go to even the Bible, Exodus 22, 24, verse 24, against interest, or usually Deuteronomy, same, Leviticus, same, Ezekiel, same, Luke 6, 35, same. So these are all, Bible verses that have, spoken against usury, or in normal calendar, we normally say interest. I think he again to raise issue about some of the products and trying to find out whether these particular products are not mimicking the conventional one that we have. Yes, what we normally say is that he raised a product like Murabaha, and he said more or less like a Murabaha is like hire purchase. Of course, yes. When we take a Murabaha product, for instance, when we talk about Murabaha, what is Murabaha? The name of the Murabaha in English terminology is cost plus. And the principle of non-interest banking, you don't sell what you don't have. So for that matter, the bank must own the thing before they can transfer it to, the individual who has purchased the thing, or the individual who wants that particular thing. By so doing, definitely there should be a markup on that particular, how do you call it, item. But the question is, when it comes to the conventional bank, the markup, can you bargain for the markup or the profits or the interest that they normally add to it? The answer is no, it's fixed. Okay, but when you come to the conventional one, it's very flexible because it must be agreed upon. And one, you must understand the fact that these particular products, there must be full disclosure around this particular thing that they are even selling to you. This is how much I've bought it. This is how much I'm selling it to you. This is the cost of it. This is my cost of markup. Then the customer will now agree, yes, I'll buy it. So like the way I mentioned, going into the whole product is going to take much of the time, since I have only 15 minutes. And the other things that I think I have to talk about. Now, the whole concept of non-interest banking, depending on where you find yourself. So people don't understand that, yes, of course, there are some countries that are, secular countries. There are other countries that are purely religious countries. So now you come to Ghana, for instance, Nigeria, we call it non-interest banking. And I think I'll explain why we call it non-interest banking. You go to other countries, even there are other Muslim countries that they don't call it Islamic banking. Okay, others call it non-interest banking, others call it ethical banking, others call it Abrahamic banking, because almost all the books welcome the concept. And others call it participatory banking. You go to Morocco, they call it participatory banking. They don't call it Islamic banking. So depending on where you stand, and depending on where you stand and how you want to call it as a country. If it's a secular country, you must agree on what should be okay for you. After all, money has no religion. Okay, so it's not about the religious angle. I think I'll share some data with with our listeners so that they will understand exactly what I'm talking about. Now, I was saying that I'm going to explain the non-interest banking and how even the name came about. It is not as a result of covering anything. No, I think I've done several explanations around this subject matter, why we call it non-interest banking. We are in a secular country where we have Muslim and Christians and, other religious faith. Secondly, we have different financing model in the country. The third issue is because the country has different people within it. When this concept were coming on board, what did the central bank do? The central bank embarked on consultation. And I think from even the institute here, we went out to do a lot of consultation with the Christian groupings and, the Catholic Bishop Conference. And even, of course, he made reference to our conference. The last conference that we had, we have almost all the Christian grouping coming in to give their solidarity message and backing the system, because it's something that is, being supported by the religious books. Now, there were consultation out there, understanding the importance of non-interest banking and how it can help develop the country. I'm very happy that my brother made mention of Sukuk. I'll come and talk about that. I don't know, the time is not much, so I don't even know where to touch. Now, upon the consultation, both the Christian groupings, the Catholic Bishop Conference, the Pentecostal and charismatic churches, and what have you, the Christian Council, all these groupings were consulted with the central bank. The Muslim groupings were invited, and all other groupings. After that, both the both the Muslims and the Christians gave out their suggestions. And finally, both teams from the Muslim community, from the Christian community came together to agree on the name non-interest banking. So it's not to cover anything, but it's something that was agreed by both the central bank as a regulator to the Christians as citizens and Muslims as citizens. This is the financing model that some people want. We are bringing it on board. What do you see? So everybody brought his suggestion. And of course, I've seen some members who are on this platform right now. They participated in the process, as well as my good self. I participated in this particular process. So we know what we were talking about, what we are talking about. Now, I think in Emmanuel's presentation, he raised the issue of the NIFAC at the central bank. And he was talking about they promoting religious, or are they going to promote or make sure they promote the religious angle of it within the central bank? No. When you go to Nigeria, for instance, he made reference to Nigeria. Nigeria, for instance, they have similar thing there. They call it FRACE, Financial Regulatory Advisory Council of Experts. What do? They make sure that all the elements that we call riba or whatever that we say are unethical will not find their way in. For instance, let's say that we have a non-interest system where we spoke about the things that are ethical and are unethical. Those that are unethical, who is there to do the policing to make sure that monies that are meant for non-interest system will remain within the non-interest system stream? People will not use monies that are meant for non-interest for conventional system. For instance, if we say we want to ring fence our money to make sure we only promote ethical things. For instance, any company that will come want to promote alcoholism, which we know the effects on it on youth in the country, we say don't use our money for that. 2, anybody who wants to go into pornographic activity, say don't use our money to finance it. So these are ethical issues that are forbidden from all the religious books, unless maybe somebody wants to tell us maybe their books support it, but I know very well, morally wise, ethically wise, nobody would like to make sure. So there should be some people who should make sure that these things are being followed on. You go to Nigeria, for instance, maybe if Mr. Emmanuel can check on the phrase, we have Christians there. So, and even in Ghana here, from my understanding, from what the information reaching out to me, there are some Christians that have been given support to say. So it's not, there for religious agenda. No, to make sure things are being done ethically. That is the last one. You raised the issue about AYOFI. AYOFI, Accounting and Auditing Organization of Islamic Financial Institutions. What do? They are standard setting institutions to make sure that you follow all the standards of non-interest banking. And like the way we have the how do you call it? The accounting principles. The name has escaped me. So we have the ones that the financial regulatory. What's the name of this thing? Yes,
IFRS.
IFRS. That's good, doctor. IFRS, International Financial Regulatory Standards, the IFRS. So IFRS gives standards when it comes to what's banking and accounting and finance. Now, we have similar thing for the non-interest system to make sure that all these standards are being followed. So AYOFI is there to give the standards of non-interest banking and financial system. And I remember Mr. Emma raised an issue about the problems that we have. Let me share this data with you. I don't know if you can make me an admin to share this particular data with you.
Yes, I think you can still share. You can share,
still share, right?
And even if you can share your video too.
My video. Wow, I'm coming. So this is a research that was conducted, I think, recently by what was the name? A research that was conducted by Islamic Finance Research Institute of Ghana, that's IFRIG, on non-interest banking and finance system in the country, its prospects and challenges. But then I'm only going to raise issue, let me see, let me add, share. Okay. So this is a survey that was conducted. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see it, please.
You can see. I don't know if the rest can see. So this is you raise the issue of challenge, and I think I have to address this particular issue head on. So this is a question that was posed to respondents, and we have close to almost 4,000 respondents, and this is across the country, across the Eastern region, where question that was posed was, what are the likely challenge non-interest bank or Islamic bank may face in the country? We have almost about 150 regulatory issues. Currently, as we are speaking, we don't have any regulatory issue. The reason being that the recommendation that was sent to the central bank, they've worked with it. Regulatory issue as we speak is no more a problem because there are guidelines that have been circulated, which was issued around January. Then another issue that came up that is being a challenge is stiff competition with the non-interest banks. They are yet to come on board, but as I want to say, non-interest banks comes to complement the conventional system. So they are not going to be in competition. The reason being that there are some area that the conventional bank don't even fund, but non-interest banks fund them. So they are coming to complement them. Others raise issue of religious discrimination. That's almost around 15% as in religious discrimination. Currently, as we are speaking, I made mention that both the Muslims and the Christians in the country came together to even name the thing non-interest bank or non-interest banking system. So they were even at our conference to give solidarity message in support of the concept. So the non-interest bank does not discriminate. No. It's open to all. That is why even the regulatory framework mentioned that don't even put any religious marks on it. That will even push people away. For that matter, nobody should put any religion. So, for instance, if I'm coming to a bank and I see maybe the cross, I'm going to tell myself that this particular bank is for the Christians. So it's going to push me away. They say if I'm coming to the bank and I see maybe a sign of a moon or something on a bank, it will push the Christians away. We are saying that don't put anything like that on it, because the system that do not discriminate is open to all. The rules that we use the non-interest funds to construct, all of us will apply on it. The monies that we are going to use, or the monies that we are going to take from the non-interest bank to set up hospitals, all of us will go. Most of us go to the hospital, meet all manner of doctors, whether Muslim and Christian. We don't ask, I don't come to the hospital to even ask a doctor, are you a Muslim or Christian before you take care of me? No. So this is a system that we must understand that it is something that is meant for everyone. Money has no religion. Okay? Now, people raise issue of what? Human resource. That is almost at 47.1%. They are saying the challenge that we may face is what? Human resource. Of course, currently the Chartered Institute of Bankers are doing training with us, training the whole country, those within the banking system. We are doing our own training with different institutions, some banks and so on. And people are appreciating what the system is all about. So it is very, very important for us to understand that we are not going to leave a room for anybody to say, I don't understand. The opportunity is there. We do monthly webinars. We do conferences just to enlighten everyone. And whoever comes, currently as we are speaking, we have a lot of facilitators who are Christians. They read their Bible 24/7. They attend churches. They do all manner of things. The point is that it is a financing model that comes to what? Support, lift people below, or lift people above the poverty line, to make sure, because there are certain financing model. You go to the bank today, like the way I mentioned in one of my interview. I have been a banker before. I've been with almost 3 banks before I stopped banking. But currently, I'm advocating for it because I realize the conventional system is not helping. You come to a bank looking for funding, they'll tell you go and bring 5-year statement. Meanwhile, you just completed school, no money for you. But the non-interest bank gives you the opportunity as a startup, like the product that he mentioned, Musharaka or Mudaraba. That is what venture capital, or maybe come in as an entrepreneur. I don't have the money, and the bank is ready to fund it, and make sure that you are being supported to carry out your activity, and you will get job to do as an entrepreneur, and even employ others, moving people below, above the poverty line. You take Musharaka partnership in a form where everybody contributes, okay, to carry out a project, and profit are being shared according to your contribution level. So these are all products that are in the system. Currently, as we are speaking, different institutions are carrying out training, for people to understand the whole concept. Banks are busily, carrying out these particular projects as we are speaking. Others are saying, which constitute a huge figure, that is 61.4%, as a lack of awareness. Of course, many are not aware of it. People think it's a religious agenda. No, it's not a religious agenda. It's not a religious agenda. Go and look at the president of the country is a Muslim. Okay, the president of the country is a Christian. The governor of the central bank is a Christian. The second deputy governor is a Christian. The advisor to the governor is a Christian. Are we saying they don't know what they are doing? Of course, they know what they are doing. Let me give a typical example. You go to UK, they've issued sukuk for even government facility. You go to China, they've issued sukuk for government activity. You go to Luxembourg, they've issued sukuk for, what is sukuk? Non-interest bond for government activity. You go to, I'm giving you Christian countries, non-Muslim countries that are already issuing sukuk for their projects. So as we speak, it's not about religion, no. It's about what? The development of the country. Look at how the way IMF are, holding our neck every now and then. Anytime you are trying to see or look for, anybody at the authority, tell you they are going for IMF meeting. For what? Because we keep on borrowing at the higher rate or at the higher costs. And it keep on, eroding all our revenue. Let me give you the quotes from Obasanjo. He said, I'm only quoting Obasanjo. This is the president of Nigeria. He said, all that we borrowed was 5 billion, and we have paid about 16 billion. Yet we are still being told that we owe about 28 billion. So that is what we are talking about. So let's calm down and understand the whole concept. I want you to understand one thing. In non-interest banking, we don't give loans. We rather enter into contracts. And we agree on profit and loss sharing. When we make profits, we share. When we make loss, we share. Now, can you tell me any bank that will share your loss in the course of your business? If you don't pay, they'll come after you. If you don't pay, they'll come after you. So we are saying that we want a fair system. Those of us who have been in the banking system, I can tell you for a fact that we go to close many shops, many offices, because they've used their offices or their items as collateral because they are not able to pay their loans. I've done a lot of research around, loan delinquency. It is not something that is palatable. Somebody will even ask, why are you even delving into this area? That is what caused some of us to go into this particular area, to understand what is the cause of people not being able to pay their loan. Look at the repayment period, the prepayment period. They give you loan from today that the loan is being disbursed. They've started counting it. Meanwhile, you have not even started marketing or doing anything within that particular business. So there's a serious issue that we need to tackle.
Hi,
Heads
Dr.
on.
Ali. Please, you
That's
have
why I
1
said that
minute
the
to
time is
wrap
not enough. You gave
Yeah.
Emmanuel 45 minutes. You give me 15 minutes. So how can I make justice to the issues that he has raised? So, Madam Moderator, I think I have to do due diligence to this issue, give the practical aspects for us to
Sure.
understand why the non-interest banking or non-interest finance is more important at this time of our life and the country.
Mr. Ali, please, if I may intervene, that's why we do. The respondents always have 15 minutes, and the main presenter have 30 minutes, so that you can get a chance to share the notes. But we will take note of your concern, which is a very valid concern, and we can do a sequel.
Of course, if you want us to respond to a presentation that is 45 minutes using only 15, we cannot.
We have given you 30 minutes, by the way. We have given you more than 15 minutes, by the way. So
I think I've addressed some of the concerns. Maybe the listeners can raise some of the questions.
Exactly. And we can get you to do a full presentation for someone also to respond.
I would have appreciate that. To throw more light on some of these issues.
Let us get the participants, please.
No problem. Thank you
very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali, for that insightful presentation. I'm sure the questions would expose a lot more of these issues and will give you the opportunity to respond. If you have any questions, I think you can put them in the chat box now and we'll respond. So we have a few questions from our Facebook. Someone is asking, can non-Muslims borrow from an Islamic banking scheme? And if anyone can borrow, how do we monitor what is ethical and what is not? How do we agree on what is ethical and what is not ethical in a secular or pluralistic state, since we have different ethical reference points? What may be deemed non-ethical by one may be considered by another to be ethical. Okay, so basically the person wants to know how a non-Muslim can borrow from an Islamic banking scheme. So I don't know if Dr. Ali, you can take that. The second one is, how can non-interest banking be sustained in a capitalist market global system? Is it realistic? So these are the two questions we have now. Dr. Ali, I'll give you the opportunity to respond to these questions.
Okay, so first of all, let me answer the first question. Can a non-Muslim borrow from an Islamic banking scheme? Yes, of course. That's why I'm saying money has no religion. Okay, money has no religion. A Muslim, a Christian, a non-Muslim can participate in this, scheme. Being an atheist, a Christian, a traditionalist, money has no religion. For the fact that you are qualified and you are going to go into ethical activity, Nobody will ask you your religion. I don't. Fortunately for some of us, we've had the opportunity of doing
Dr. Ali, we
internships
are losing
with.
you. The line is breaking.
Can you hear me now? Is it okay
Yes,
now?
yes, it's better now.
Fortunately for some of us, we've seen some of the account opening packs in other countries. They will not even ask you whether you are a Muslim or a Christian. You are a customer. The leading customers of Jaiz Bank in Nigeria are Christians. The leading customers at Taj Bank are Christians. So money has no religion. Everybody is welcome. Only what the bank is looking for is customers who will venture into ethical activity to what? To support the country. That is why you realize that even there is something that we call the SDG and non-interest banking and finance. You understand? Because you realize that this, system of or mode of financing support the SDGs. Okay, moving people from the poverty line and so on, because the system creates opportunity for everyone, irrespective of your religion. And the next question the person asks is if anyone can borrow, and how are we going to do the monitoring in terms of whether it's ethical or it's unethical. That brings me back to my earlier comment of what the regulation has captured that we call the NIFAC. And in Nigeria, they call it FRASE, Financial Regulatory Advisory Council of Experts. They are there to make sure that the bank are doing ethical banking and financing. So that's their role. And I can tell you for a fact that this is a check. Maybe when I'm done, I don't know how I can share. Or maybe if I can look for one of my slides and for you to see that during the 2008 World Credit Crunch, all the banks in the world went down, with the exception of the Islamic banks. This should tell you how resilient and robust the system is. So there are other people who seek to make sure that all the internal controls are being taken care of. There are people at the top to make sure that all what you are going to do is ethical and is moral. So the next question is, how do we agree on what is ethical and what is not ethical? What is ethical? We all know what the books are talking about ethical. No book will promote pornography. We call it adult entertainment. No book will promote that. No book will promote stealing. No book will promote, alcoholism and so on, because of what the how do you call it? The effects on it on a human. So what is ethical is ethical in all books. Even the non-interest banking do not finance, war, or maybe do not finance mass, how do you call it? Weapons of mass destruction. Even if you are coming for money to buy weapons, they have to investigate to make sure, is it for self-defense or something? So whatever you see in the system, there are people who seek to make sure. And like the way I mentioned, Nigeria, you go to the FRASE, you have Christians there. Ghana, to my understanding from the central bank, they have even Christians there. So everybody has been given, a level field for us to play to understand what the system is and so on. Fortunately for us, even you go to the banking school today, the course that we are carrying out, okay, the course that we are carrying out, most of the participants are Christians, and they are asking relevant questions, and everybody is enjoying the class. Fortunately, some of our facilitators are even online here listening to us. And the next question that they ask, what may be deemed on non-ethical by one may be considered by another to be ethical. As for this one, I don't know, but like the way I mentioned, what is ethical, as we all know, we are considering what are ethical, in the books, in the religious books, and we all what is ethical. Pornography is not an ethical thing. Alcoholism is not an ethical thing. Gambling is not an ethical thing, and non-interest banking and finance system do not support this. And the next question, how do we manage that? Okay, so I think I've already answered that one. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali. I think there's another question which says, what challenges do Islamic banks face in countries whose financial systems are largely conventional? Before you answer that, we want to give an opportunity to participants to raise their hands and ask the questions directly. We have very limited time, so one question per person, and please limit it to less than 1 minute. Thank you.
Right, please, whilst some are yet to raise their hand, I think there are still some other questions in the chat.
Yes,
Maybe,
yes.
yeah.
Emmanuel can chip in too if he wants to respond to any of the questions too.
Yes. So Emmanuel, any of the questions you can take.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to Dr. Ali for the feedback that he has given. Yeah. So the points I have raised, yes, I have the benefit of knowing, understanding the technicalities of Islamic law and all that. But as a researcher, I have to reflect the questions that people ask. And so I think it is important, as I mentioned at the end, we do not ignore the concerns that people raised in terms of the religious elements, but I would want to think of how do we turn them into positive, because as I said at the end, there are values in what the Quran teaches about riba and what the Christian scriptures also teach about usury and all that. But being mindful of the kind of environment we find ourselves. And that is the question which I see someone putting, that how do we then handle it in such a way that it does not also confront the kind of jurisdiction that we find ourselves? And that's where I think that kind of engagement should continue to go on. And maybe we might want to think more about the values behind some of the teachings. So issues of strictly not taking interest, for instance, what is the value behind it? What is the idea behind it? And how can we implement that, even if it has to be in a different way, so that it reflects the general interest of the society, so that we disabuse the minds of people from the notion that this is just religious thing, and we end up throwing away the proverbial baby with the bathwater, even if there is a bathwater at all. So yeah, this would be my initial response, and there are some few other questions if maybe Dr. Ali would also want to address them, please.
Okay,
Yes.
I think there's another question here. It said the Constitution of Ghana is supreme to any other in the land. Don't you think don't you think the Sharia law is not needed, as it may be challenged along the line? Now, when we talk about Sharia law, what is Sharia? Sharia is just laws that govern people, and I'm talking about laws that that govern way of life, like culture. Don't do this, do that, don't steal. That is all what Sharia is all about. Sharia means set of laws. That's all. That's what it means. And we all have laws in our own communities. So sometimes the terminology Sharia put people away, we understand. But the point is that in every transaction that you see in the non-interest financial system, most of them are on contracts. And contract is all about offer and acceptance. Okay, so if you violate any of the contract, the court of law will deal with you like the way it's happening in other countries. Okay, the court of law will deal with you. So we are not importing any law, any Quranic verse to come and no. These are a set of laws. We are already having our court system in Ghana. Nothing is changing. Whatever you go in a non-interest banking and finance system is all under contract. If you say you want to build this, like the way my brother mentioned on some of the products that has to do with construction, we talk about the specification. If as a contractor you didn't go by the specification and there's a problem, what do we do? The court will handle you. Breach of contract, simplicity. There is no any problem. So we are not bringing any Sharia law in the country. Like the way I mentioned, what is Sharia? Set of laws. We already have set of laws in the country. And all these laws that we are talking about are all ethical laws, which are found in other books as well. So that is why I realized that the regulation did not even mention anything Sharia, because we are dealing with our own laws in the country. I don't know if I've answered your question. Then somebody is asking issue about markup. Yes. Now, when they say, please, the markup that is added for higher purchase, how different is it from the fixed interest? You said this one is a fixed interest. Markup, you can bargain. And you see, when it comes to non-interest banking system, there must be full disclosure. So if somebody or a bank decide to buy something for you, the bank must make sure that he disclose how much he has bought that thing for you. And besides, you will even go and bring, in some cases, you go, maybe if you want to finance, for instance, let me say Muraba, okay, Cost Plus, and you want to, the bank should buy a car for you. You go to the bank, you go to the manufacturer or those who sell cars, you get the invoice. The bank will now see it. So there's full disclosure. Full disclosure. Now the bank will say, okay, I'll finance it for you, but this is my markup. They will give you the opportunity to bargain. Oh, yes, it's fine. It's not fine. Oh, please look at it for me. This and that. But at the end of the day, the bank is there to make profit and as well to satisfy you as well. So you agree on something. So that's why we call it PLS, profit and loss sharing. So now, let's be fair to ourselves. Will any bank today finance a car and ask you to come and let's bargain on the interest they are going to pay? No. They have certain threshold, and that is where it remains. So I think another question, there is issue about the regulatory framework from the Bank of Ghana, and we have some words captured in as in if the law is the law for non-interest banking, which should words and could be performed, could be a platform for possible Islamic banking and or any other religious banking. This Islamic nomenclature in the Bank of Ghana document or not a window for Sharia law? I'm not getting your question, but I don't know. I don't know what you are trying to. Maybe if you can raise your hand and
Okay. Dr. Ali, I think we'll give the opportunity to Rock Vision now
okay.
to ask a question. Yeah. Please go ahead. Rock Vision.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Doc, thank you for your master. I love it. Your 6 months. The thing that I have to ask you is this. Islamic evangelism through money.
It seems your line is breaking. Maybe if you can.
Your line is not clear. Yes.
Yeah, because I'm speaking. Can you hear me now?
Please position yourself well and ask your question.
Now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I think it's better.
Is it possible to type it in if the connection is not helping you to talk?
Okay, now. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, the question I'm asking is the removal.
Your line is still very bad.
Unfortunately, then I can't participate.
Yeah,
I'll just listen.
Please,
okay.
No, just
maybe if you can type your question in the chat box so that we can assist.
No, I can't. And I'm the same participated. I'm in the United. I'm trying my best to do it, but
okay,
I can ask it another time.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Eric Abrahams Appiah, you can go ahead with your question.
All right. Thank you very much for the presentation. I hope you are hearing me.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
In the presentation that was made, one of the documents that on the slides that was captured about from the Bank of Ghana. It is called non-interest banking, but in that non-interest banking document, we have some words that are Islamic words in the non-interest banking documents. So I asked the question, if it's a non-interest banking document that could be used possibly in the future by other religious non-interest banking, why is it that Islamic words have been captured there? Is there not a window for a window for the Sharia law? That's my question. Okay. If it's a non-interest banking framework for all non-interest banking, or non-religious interest banking, how come there are religious nomenclature captured in the document?
Okay, I think I get you, Mr. Eric Abraham Appiah. Thank you very much. I think this question is very, very important. Yeah, so during the time of the drafts, like the way I mentioned, there were how do you call it, engagement with both sides, the Muslim, the Christian, and the rest of the public. And we too did our own at our level. Now, what is more important that I want us to understand is the fact that there are certain things that changing them may sound some way. The reason being that the literature that we have, okay, because I want you to understand that what we are talking about is being recognized by IMF and the World Bank, and they are participating in this strongly, and you can do your own checks. So that is how the names are being captured in the literature. So for us to even make sure that people understand it, we even propose that once they bring even the Arabic terminology, because when you talk about Arabic is not, Arabic is a language. It's not a religion. Arabic is a language. Like the way we have English language. English language is not a religion. So the Arabs speak Arabic, their language, okay? But it doesn't make the language a religion. So we have to understand that some of these terminologies are in Arabic terminologies, okay? They are in Arabic. For that matter, we even propose that there should be English terminologies as close to it, so that people can be able to relate. You see me mentioning that, okay, if I mention Muraba, I mention Cost Plus. The reason being that I want everybody to relate and follow. But they made us understand it's a live document. For that matter, with time, they are going to revise it based on what public, response and so on. So this is the version 1. And even after the version 1, a lot of, issue has been raised, and the central bank is taking notice of some of them. So that is what I just want to say with regards to the terminology. But like the way I mentioned, it is not an opportunity to convert anybody. No conversion. It's just a transaction. It's optional. It's just a transaction that people are going to being given. So that is what I can say for now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali. I think there's another question. Who will be the shareholders in non-interest banks, and how will the profits and loss be shared?
In terms of shareholding, whoever wants to go into non-interest banking system, they can pull themselves together. In Nigeria, for instance, we have some churches and some people, who are own Takaful company, insurance company. Some of them owns bank, non-interest banks. The question is, who are they? They are Christians.
Dr. Ali, are you with us?
Some are Muslims in there, and opportunity. Just follow the rules. And the central bank is just a regulator. The central bank will not set up a bank for anybody. They are regulated. So whoever wants to do non-interest banking, follow our rules and come and do it. When you violate it, they'll shut you down. Like the conventional bank, they have their own, banking acts. That guys how it should be done. Same way, the same banking act give opportunity for how the non-interest banking should be carried out. So you follow the rules, you stay. You don't follow the rules, they make sure you've been striked out. So everybody is welcome, being a Muslim, a Christian, whoever you are, if you want to participate. It's a business model. Whoever wants to go into it, you can go. And in terms of profit and loss sharing, that one is about your, capital contribution. If you contribute, higher, when the earning per share, goes up, you get more money, and that is it. Somebody say, please, how far is GCB PLC in the role of non-interest banking? Hey, this one I can't answer because I'm not established GCB. This question that I can answer unless maybe I get someone who is working, at GCB. They can be able to tell us as to what they are doing. I can't answer this particular question. Thank you. Somebody say, in corporate governance structure in non-interest banking in Ghana, do you presently have the Sharia board? If not, what replaces it? Yeah, so Mr. Eric, the central bank has presented their guideline. In the guideline, we don't have Sharia board, but rather we have NIFAC, Non-Interest Financial Advisory Committee, or Advisory Council. Okay, they are dealing with everything that has to do with the ethical nature of the non-interest banking and finance system. So as we speak, we don't have Sharia board. We have NIFAC. So that's what I can say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali, for answering the questions in the best way that you can. I'm sure we'll make time to have an in-depth discussion on Islamic banking and finance in Ghana. Really appreciate your time. Yes, and thank you, Emmanuel, for that presentation. Prof, I don't know if you have something to say to wrap up.
Can I say something quick?
Emmanuel, okay, I'll give you 10 seconds.
Yeah, just to say that, yeah, the concern that Mr. Abraham raised earlier in terms of the Islamic terminologies in the regulation, that's a point I also raised earlier. But the other thing to bear in mind is that whereas Christians and even Jews also have these non-interest provisions in their revealed books, it looks like we've not made time to develop them well. What that would mean in practice, unlike how Islamic law has done it. And that would somehow also explain why sometimes when people talk about these things, they would use the Islamic terminologies. But I think it is a fair point that if we have equivalence of them that everyone would appreciate across religious board, then it may be better to approach it from that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Prof, do you have anything?
A quick one. Yes, I think this particular point has been raised, on several occasions. And like the way I mentioned, I'm not here to defend the central bank because we all participated in the process. That's why I'm able to speak to it. Now, the central bank has collected all views and they've given fair hearing. That is why you realize that when you look at the framework, okay, the framework that Ghana is having is, unique on its own compared to other countries. So after we even shared it, a lot of people were asking that this one is very unique on its own, and then we said yes, because that is the representation of the Ghanaian views and how they want it to work, considering that they have to make sure everything is ethical in nature. So it's something that everybody have agreed. Notwithstanding, the Arabic terminology is something that we are all pushing to make sure we get the English version being inculcated. But I think as one of the this thing that we shared, we are trying to say that, okay, anything that is even going out there, should the bank start working, should we make sure that any Arabic term that they will bring for people to relate, they should be able to add the English terminology. So those of us who are on the platform and they are students that we are taking at the banking school, they can attest to the fact that most of the things that we are talking about as English terminologies are closer to the Arabic terminology for them to be able to relate. Sometimes even ask questions like the way Emmanuel raised about issue of hire purchase and murabaha. They have two different things when it comes in terms of its principles and its products and its product design and everything. Maybe next time we can get time and go into deep for us to give the difference between the conventional hire purchase and the non-interest murabaha. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. I've definitely seen that the questions are generating more discussion, so we'll have to make time to have a deeper conversation about this. I'll give Prof. Azuma, our Executive Director, the opportunity to give us some few sentences to wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Emmanuel. Thank you, Dr. Ali. This has been very stimulating and very informative. Yeah, I'm sure we've all learned something different from something new today from this lecture. We will discuss, and if there's a need to do a sequel, we'll do that. We will also just want to say that, yeah, for me personally, these are lofty ideas, and they are wonderful on paper. As a Ghanaian speaking, many things look nice on paper, but you try them on the ground and you see all the mess popping up. And that's my worry. I haven't said that if you don't try something, you cannot be able to fix the problems. But I know that some of these things that we preach nicely on paper don't always bear out in practice, especially in our context in Ghana. And that's not only about banking. We already know the mess that the banking system went into in the last few years in Ghana. And I'm sure all of that will be taken into account. I also want to let people know that sometimes our own prejudices, when we hear anything about Islam, Sharia, Arabic, then we are scared. And all of these prejudices feed into our attitudes. And those are not helpful. I think there are some good things that can be learned from this system if it is put out very transparently and the discussion is done very well and the implementation is monitored properly. So all for the good of Mother Ghana and for everybody in Ghana. Thank you all very much, and God bless you all. And see you next time for our next lecture in June. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Prof.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We're saying
Bye-bye.
800. Kwata 800.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.